Let's talk some Division II power rankings. Pretty sweet stuff here. Of course, the man, Wayne Cavati, he provides these rankings. This was tweeted out by NCAA Division II earlier today. Just wanted to go over this. Not a whole lot of surprises in this list. I guess maybe a couple, because it is just a top 10. So this really is the upper echelon of Division II football as a whole. The top two, guys, I mean, not really surprising here. Number 1, Ferris State. Number 2, Grand Valley State. That seems to be the consensus across most of these different polls. Ferris, 2-time national defending champion, and Grand Valley State, the only team to beat them in the last 2 years, that being for a GLIAC championship last year. So those two spots kind of write themselves. As far as what happens with these two teams specifically, we talk a lot about Ferris in the show. I mean, you have to. Quarterbacks coming back, Malik Mitchell, Carson Golker. Malik, obviously a really great athlete, can sling it too. Carson Golker has a nose for the end zone, set a NCAA record for rushing touchdowns by a quarterback last year. I don't even remember what the number was. It was absurd. 31 touchdowns as a redshirt freshman last year. He's got a lot of playing left in him. They opened their season a week from today against Mercyhurst, but they do have a trip to FCS opponent Montana, and then a big non-conference test at Ashland before they open GLIAC play. So while the opener, that Mercyhurst game, might be literally 70-0, they are going to have some really competitive bouts as they get into more of the regular season. That Montana game is exciting, man. That is a really exciting prospect. There's always, there's conversation every year around college football. Oh, could this group of 5 team beat the FBS team? Could this D2 team beat this low-level D1, D3, the crossover, right? We get to see it. Ferris State, probably the best, arguably the best Division II team in the country right now, gets to play Montana, who, maybe I wouldn't consider them a power right now. That being Montana State, you could call them a power in the FCS world. But Montana, still very respectable program. Very excited to see what happens there, especially going out to Montana for that trip. It might be different if they were coming over to Big Rapids, but very excited to see what that game entails. Number 2, Grand Valley State. They did lose some big-time pieces. We talked a lot about that, the transfer portal. They lose their 2 best pass catchers. They go and lose some other pieces on defense. Tariq Reed, their running back, entered the portal, ended up coming back, so they get him back. Abe Swanson, one of our D1R athletes, is kind of the face of that squad right now. So shout out to Abe. He's poised to have a really big year. They also bring back Cade Peterson, their quarterback. That's probably some of the bigger names you're going to hear a lot of this year. As always, too, though, there's going to be other guys that step up and make some big-time plays. We got another D1R athlete from GV, that being Jack Gilchrist in the defensive line. That's a guy who I think has sneakily put up some good numbers for them, been a really big role player, potentially have him have a breakout year on the defensive front. But the Lakers really have some opportunity to have some big-time games. The first one, talk about a Week 1 matchup against Colorado Mines, the team that was a national runner-up last year, the team that is in the top 5 in just about every ranking. They play Colorado Mines at Colorado Mines, I do believe, and then they come back home to play CSU Pueblo. 2 really good games to start off the year for the Lakers. So excited about that. The top 2 teams in the country's, guys, only, 65 miles apart. Pretty sweet. The Anchor Bone Classic this year is going to be really exciting. Number 3, though, is Pittsburg State. They went from 8-3 to 12-1 last year, 11-0 through MIAA play. They gave Ferris probably their best game of the year besides the Grand Valley loss, obviously. Quarterback Chad Dotson Jr. is back. His favorite target, Devin Garrison, the best tight end in Division II, a lot of people are saying, is also back. The defensive side, though, is probably where they're going to cause a lot of havoc for teams. Their offense, very respectable front, but that defense for them has been absolutely suffocating. Their leading tacklers, the guys leading in interceptions, pass breakups, all of these really large contributing stat leaders are all back in 2023 for the Gorillas. And we did just add a D1R athlete from there as well. If you follow us on the socials, you saw that. Trace Jeffries, one of their offensive linemen, who was an All-American last year. So we're excited to have Trace be a part of this family and see what he and the Gorillas can do this year. Moving on, though. Kind of just buzzed through these. Colorado School of Mines at number 4. Again, not a whole lot of shockers, guys. I told you that. Not a lot of surprises, but just talking about them a little bit. The obvious one, the Harlan Hill winner last year, John Matoka back, and Max McLeod, his favorite target on that offense, back as well. That's going to be a very dangerous combo. Little bit of some changes in the offensive backfield. Maybe not as much depth on the offensive line as they would like, but I do believe they bring back some anchors defensively, and when you have the quarterback position locked up with a guy like that, you know you're going to go far with the supporting cast they have over there. The RMAC seems to be in their grasp. Number 5, Northwest Missouri State, a team that has dominated Division II for the better half of a decade. It will be interesting to see their quarterback, Mike Hohensee, back under center with his top 2 targets, him actually being the guy this year. I don't believe that was like quite a stenciled spot for him last year. Excited to see what he does under center for the Bearcats. They've got some really great conference play. You talk about another 2 teams right there, number 3 and number 5 in Northwest Missouri State and in Pittsburg State in the MIAA. That's going to be some great competition. Number 6 is Minnesota State. We just had Trey Vavel on from the Mavericks. That's a team that returns a lot. The 2019 national runner-up, that was the kind of the last time they made it to that final season. They did make it to the postseason last year. They finished with 6 straight wins in the regular season over 3 top 25 teams, ended up losing to that Mines team. But when you look at that game, Minnesota State, I do believe, was out early, and Mines clawed their way back into it. That could have been a very different playoffs if the Mavericks end up pulling that one out. Another team from the NSIC, that being Bemidji State at number 7. Again, where does it start? Quarterback, Brandon Alt, the NSIC Player of the Year last year. He is certainly something. They also bring back, obviously, a ton of other pieces. The Beavers had, I think, a little bit of an unsuspecting season last year. Not that anyone thought they were going to be terrible. They just came out and started winning some games that started to raise some eyebrows. So much higher expectations for them heading into this year. Number 8 is Ouachita Baptist. That's a squad for me that is interesting. They graduate a few big pieces. I don't think that will change their overall look, but for me, they're kind of far and away being in the GAC to me, like, you talk about these teams, think about the team we just talked about. We've gone through 7 teams, 6 of them belong to 3 conferences, right? So we have 2 in the GLIAC, 2 in the NSIC, 2 in the MIAA, and now you had 1 in the RMAC, now 1 in the GAC. And that, to me, is just one reason to, not to doubt, all right, I'm not saying putting that word out there, but just to be skeptical of Ouachita. That would be kind of my pick as, they've outperformed any expectations last year. So certainly don't want to doubt them. Number 9 is Ashland, a team we talked about today a little bit because they opened with IUP against Karst Hunter and company. Ashland does lose a lot, especially a new head coach, Doug Geezer, and the Eagles had one of the best defenses in D2 football last year. They do graduate quite a few, but they bring back some guys that are, pretty important. All GMAC selections, defensive end Jeffrey Barnett, and also linebacker Jackson Myers. They're coming back to anchor that defensive front. A big piece for them, too. Running backs, Larry Martin, Giovanni Washington in the backfield. Those 2 guys have been absolutely dynamic for the Eagles. Excited to see that. Number 10, Indiana, Pennsylvania, IUP again. So we're talking about a top 10 matchup right there. Week 1, Ashland versus IUP. And then also with Mines and Grand Valley. Week 1 is going to be exciting, Division II football-wise, guys. Very exciting. A lot of stuff right there. And then I can touch on it here from Wayne's list. The first 5 out would have been Angelo State, Delta State, Harding, Virginia Union, and West Florida. So those 2 Gulf South powerhouses, those are the ones I was expecting one of those to be in the top 10, as much hype as both West Florida and Delta State have made, with Shegog and Pee-wee at the helm of both those at the quarterback position, respectively. West Florida's added a lot in the transfer portal. Delta State just returns so much. Virginia Union, you got to talk about Jada Byers, probably the best running back in D2. But, Angelo State always in that conversation. But, a lot of stuff going on in D2, guys.